for a treat today, Fortune Fastlane member. We're going to hear from the famous Steve Wozniak. Do I need to ask if you know him? Because you probably know this man who co-founded Apple together with Steve Jobs. Though that wouldn't stop us from giving you a little more information about this man who you'll have an alone time with. Stephen Gary Wozniak, or known as Steve Wozniak, was born on August 11 of 1950 in San Jose, California, USA. He's an American electronics engineer, co-founder of Apple Computer, and the designer of the very first commercially successful personal computer. He was also awarded with the U.S. National Medal of Technology together with Steve Jobs. Unfortunately, he left Apple, the company he co-founded on 1986, and took his own designs. Another thing about him, do you know that he was only 13 years old when he first built his computer? He was also called an electronics prodigy back when he was in high school. Imagine that! How could a 13-year-old young man build a computer? Well, he really deserved to be called a prodigy. What would you pay for 30 minutes of one-on-one conversation with Steve Wozniak? Luckily for you, Fortune Fastlaner, we've curated some of the most inspirational tips, advice, and speeches that Steve Wozniak has shared. Remember that while listening to their knowledge is the first step, the second and possibly more important step is taking action, even if it's imperfect action. Let's listen in.
Creativity pretty much comes from encounters early in life. For one thing, it's similar. This is a totally different topic, but are you going to care about school or not care about school? Turns out when you're 8 years old, that's when it shows. You can tell which ones at 8 years old have kind of given up on school, not going to be that important, they're not going to really try hard, and then a different class that is. So entrepreneurship or creativity, you have influences. You see certain TV shows and movies. You have certain conversations with friends. And sometimes they boil down to people that invent new things. My favorite books when I was very young, in elementary school even, me and a few other, I'm going to call them electronics kids, on our block, our brand new block surrounded by orchards when Silicon Valley was a real valley. And we would buy Tom Swift Jr. books and read about this young engineer who had friends and had girlfriends and had a father, and he owned a company with his father. If there was a tragedy on Earth, he'd go into a laboratory and design and build a solution within a couple of weeks. And these were our heroes, Who are your heroes when you're young? We grew up thinking, gosh, if I could ever build those. And we had science fairs. Science fairs are outside of school. School usually says, you learn this, you take these tests, you have the same answers as everyone else, and we call you intelligence. But a science fair is your own project. You make it up on your own, and you create something, and it's kind of out of the ordinary and impresses people. And I had all sorts of very top winning science fair projects in the computer area. So I just felt good. If I have an idea, play a game of tic-tac-toe and never lose, build a machine that can add numbers. I could sit down with hundreds of transistors and hook wires together. I knew how to do it and make them actually do calculations and stuff. And I just loved doing this because I was good at it, no other thing. One of the things you can do if you know electronics and how to solder pieces together with a soldering iron, connect them all. Back in those days, you could build your own ham radio, and I built my own transmitter. I built my own receiver kit. Every bit of it I built myself, and I was only 10 years old, and I got a license, and now I was a ham radio operator with a telegraph key, typing out messages. These things are fun. To some, you either discover in your life, I want to be a part of all these new things and creating new things, and that was in me. So it's in a lot of people to this day, but then a lot of other people just sort of get turned off by it early. They didn't get inspired at an early enough age, and it's hard to turn them into real creative innovators in the future.
I've read a lot of articles about the right to repair issue, but I am so busy with so many other things in my life that I haven't really gotten involved in that area, but I'm always totally supportive, and I totally think the people behind it are doing the right thing. We wouldn't have had an Apple had I not grown up in a very open technology world, an open electronics world. You could learn electronics at a very young age. I had a ham radio license at 10 years old when you had to build your own radios, every single part of them, transmitter and receiver. And back then when you bought electronic things like TVs and radios, every bit of the circuits and designs were included on paper, total open source. Someone with skill could get in and modify things to fix broken radios or televisions, or to improve them, or to even replace destroyed parts. Way back then, when I grew up, instead of chips, these products were made with vacuum tubes that are like electric glowing light bulbs. And when a TV or radio went bad, it was probably a tube that went bad. So you'd unscrew the back and you'd pull out all the tubes, maybe 5 tubes, maybe a television would have 10 tubes or so, and you'd know that one tube was likely to be bad. And even non-technical family members could pull out the tubes, and you'd put them in a bag, paper bag, and you'd take them down to a local electronics store or even to the grocery store. It was that common. And then you'd find a tube tester, and you'd look at a tube, each individual tube you'd look at it. It might have a part number like 12SA7, and then you'd look on a tube up on the tube tester, and it would say, oh, slot 25. So you'd plug it into slot 25, and press a button for a little while, and within a few seconds, a meter would go to red for bad or green to blue. And if it was bad, you'd buy a brand new 12SA7 tube to take home for your radio or television. Everyone did this all the time back then. And it made us feel good about being able to fix our things when they went bad. I don't know, you just feel good about it. If your TV went really bad, you might have to take it to a local TV repair shop, which every town had TV repair shops. And I myself, had taken electronics. I understood all the circuits inside of televisions, both black and white and color, and I could fix them with my own equipment even. I wasn't qualified to be a TV repairman. I was qualified as a TV engineer, really. When starting Apple, I could never afford a teletype for input and output. You type on this big machine, heavy machine, like you see in movies, and they cost as much as 2 cars. I could never afford one, so I didn't have any input and output possibilities, even though I had taught myself to design computers, and I wanted so badly to figure out how to build a computer that was usable. And for it to be usable, it's got to have an input and an output. Well, I owned a television, right? Everyone owned a TV, and I knew how the signals worked. But I was a TV engineer, but I was also a digital design engineer. And digital design, I could use very few parts. I was very good at that, to get all the signals out at the right time to show up as balls and paddles on my TV. So I could put the signals into the right place in the TV set. I'd look at its open source schematic, and I'd probe around with test equipment and find, yes, this is the place you put video signals in. And I sent in a little video signal, so I was able to build some arcade game projects like Pong. I did Breakout. I designed Breakout for Atari. I had an early ARPANET terminal back when there were 6 computers on the ARPANET. Now we got billions. It's called the internet. And I also have built what became the Apple I, and I could feed my signal into it. And I had my own TV, which I already owned, as an output device. I didn't have to afford something I could never afford. So I wasn't restricted, from anything that kept me really from building that computer and showing the world the future of computers, personal computers, is going to be a keyboard and a TV.
I had a car. I had taken 1 year off to work to earn the money to put myself through Berkeley, not burden my parents. I had also bought a car, a Pinto, and every weekend I was the one who got to drive groups of us down to Harvey's house was in Taft, California, and we'd go to Rosemead at Bill Duble's house, and they treated us so well, and I'd go to see my parents, and I'd go to Tijuana. Those dogs couldn't smell gunpowder. So I'd buy the big M80s and cherry bombs and drive back to the dorm, man. Our carpet was just totally burnt the whole way. And the only guy that got caught, as I said, was upstairs. Well, one time we decided to make a popcorn bomb, a bag of popcorn with a cherry bomb in the middle, and we'd slide it down this 40-pound fishing line I had, that Steve Jobs and I had done a prank with, from the 7th floor lounge of Norton Hall over to above the garden in Ida Sproul Hall, above the first floor lounge, and it was the house mother's garden, and we put all the physics to calculate how long the fuse should be on the blackboard in our 7th floor lounge. We're real proud of that one.
In those days, for computer programs, the computer was in the basement of the New Evans Hall. When you go down the basement, there were all these key punches. You type on key punches and it punches holes in cards for your letters. And at finals time, it took 40 minutes to get on a key punch. Everybody was lined up for 40 minutes. You'd have to wait. There were 2 key punches over there for an IBM computer, and it printed the wrong characters, and it just wasn't right. It wasn't the right holes. I touch typed everything. I was a good typist. And in those computer punch days, you had to get special characters like parentheses, you had to hit 2 keys with the left hand. Little pinky plus another key, little pinky plus a different key. And I was good at touch typing everything. I found out that those IBM key punches, if you type touch without looking at the wrong characters being printed, the holes were right. And the computer only knew the holes. That was one of my claims to fame on the card punch. We had little boxes of all those little chips that came out of the card punches. And of course, one time they stuck an M80 in one and shoved it under my bed. Pow! It took forever to clean that thing up. Another time, we had a food service, and I'd bring back saltine crackers. I had stacked up 17 pounds worth of saltine crackers in my dorm room on the shelf just inside the door. And I was down in the unoccupied room playing phone tricks one time, and I heard an explosion. I knew what it was. Harvey had set off an M80 in the middle of the saltine crackers all over the floor, bits of them. My roommate John and I just scooped it up and scooped it into a full trash can. Then we thought, we got an idea. We'd go up to Harvey's floor, we'll get a friend of ours to put a tape over Harvey's door so when it closes, it doesn't lock. And then Harvey discovered the tape. So then we went down by Harvey's room, and there was a fire escape. And the fire escape had a window that you could open, and right there was Harvey's window at right angles to it, and he had no window was open, no screen on it. I loved typing a lot. I loved typing. I beat the girls in high school at typing too, actually, which was unheard of in those days. And I would type people's papers. In those days, you type, you can't make a single mistake, or you have to go back and correct it with whiteout. This wasn't like today's computer, word processing days. I would type a paper all night long till 6 in the morning and charge 5 cents. And when I came back my second time to Berkeley, I would charge 5 cents for tutoring, as we'll get to. We had the Blue Box, the night I met Captain Crunch, the most famous phone freak. I'd been spreading the lore all over the campus, and he came to visit me in the dorm, and I opened it up. He taught us codes up in Kip's Pizza Parlor till late at night. Steve Jobs and I then had to drive home. Car broke down. Went over to a gas station. There was a payphone. We said, we've got to try to do this Blue Box at a payphone. And we tried, and the operator came on the line, Steve was all scared, and then he tried again. The operator came on the line, he was all scared, and got me the Blue Box when the cops showed up. Cops said, what is this device? I said, the Moog synthesizer was brand new, the first music synthesizer ever where electronics created music. And I said, it's a music synthesizer, makes tones when you press the buttons. And the cops finally put us in their car, and we knew where we were going, down to the police station. Cop turns around, hands me back the Blue Box. He says, a guy named Moog beat you to it. Oh my God, they were bamboozled. I had 4 classes, all graduate classes in hardware design and software design, all in the same room in Corey Hall. I sat in the same seat. No class started before noon either. And I sat in the same seat for 2 classes on Monday and Wednesday, same seat for 2 classes on Tuesday and Thursday. You couldn't make up something like that. At the end of the year, my roommate wrote a report for English that he was supposed to, for literature, for writing class. And it was all about a guy named Alfonso, labeled fiction. Every bit of it was totally true about what we had done in our dorm that year. But nobody would believe it. I had got this incredible job eventually working at Hewlett-Packard on the iPhone 6 of its time, the HP 35 scientific calculator that was going to change everything. And Hewlett-Packard they valued you as an employee of the company and an owner of the company. And I did a lot of projects on the side for love. People heard that they could come to this young engineer at Hewlett-Packard, and I didn't have a degree yet. I had 3 years done at Berkeley, but they interviewed me, and I could do the engineering job. So people would come to me, and I would design products for them for free. And once a year, Steve Jobs would come into town and say, "That's a neat thing you built just for fun. We got to sell this. We can sell it." And he turned them all into money.
To us, it was so exciting because it was like we thought we were doing the things for the first time they'd ever been done. And it was the first time they'd ever been done that cheap using a lot of the LSI technology. And so there was a lot of just the excitement everywhere we went. It was like putting out a little table and showing off a little card that would play music on a computer or make color was the most exciting thing in the world. And we thought we were way ahead of the rest of the world. What I was doing around that time was not even thinking about what are the right steps to take to have a very large successful company or a large successful product. It was just, I had been working my whole life to build a certain type of computer for myself, and I just built the best one that was doable in that day with the particular components available, etc. And in that sense, it wasn't like an intelligence that can lead you towards the right path. It was just being very free. I had the freedom because I was only doing it for myself. It was not a company project where a manager defined what had to be done. So I was lucky to be able to do what I did. Everywhere I go now, I go to business meetings and presentations, and they're all sitting there in three-piece suits. It's a large business. There's a lot of dollars involved. The people who have come out of school trained to run and manage business is the key element today, and that's where most of the creativity is going. There's very few technically creative products in the microcomputer world.
Is a garage operation still feasible in the small computer industry today, or is that stage over?
Well, that stage is pretty much becoming over for hardware. It used to be people could quickly manufacture some simple little PC boards on a small budget, get an ad in a little hobbyist magazine and start selling a bunch of them. And so very small entrepreneurships, thousands of them sprung up, many of them centered around Apple. That was probably the biggest direction to go. Now it's pretty much that's possible for software groups to come up with a good software project, and there are avenues to find companies that will market it for you or turn it into a product if you got something good going. Perhaps once a decade, a very large market comes from zero up to billions of dollars within a few years. It's very rare that there's such a dramatic explosion out of nowhere of a new market. It may happen again in microelectronics and computers before too long. Maybe every 10 years, a new group of people come out, and they haven't been along with the Apple and the thousands of peripherals and the thousands of softwares, and they think every time they're doing it for the first time ever. They're going to get a couple of their own hobby computer magazines that are in their group. They don't come to our group. They're going to start talking and having little trade shows and showing each other projects, and they'll start new businesses of their own, and I think that's probably about to happen. That's what they said about us. You can understand it. When you're looking down on someone else, you can understand how you were perceived back in those days, and then you also realize they were right. It's just a quirk of fate that they were wrong.
Boy, this is the first time in years. Doing this all from memory. This is hard to remember in old computer language.
The trace that you see on here, I strapped onto a drafting table, and I built this whole board myself because I wanted the chips in the ultimate perfect position. I worked for a couple of weeks every night till about 4 in the morning, laying out the little things on a big drafting table that would eventually become this board. And when I got done, I realized I had to drill 8 holes in the board. And I said, you know what? If I had only designed it a little bit differently, then I would have only had 5 holes. I tore apart my entire design for another 2 weeks, every night till 4 in the morning to get it just that perfect with only 5 holes. So you would never see the 3 missing. It had to be that artistically perfect to me because it represents yourself when you do a great design. My tips are, don't necessarily think that you have to have the home run and the huge Apple computer on your first start. I spent a long time in my life with skills just building little devices for fun. For fun is one of the key things because that drives you to think and think and think and make it better and better and better than you ever would if you're doing it for a company. Build things at first for yourself that you would want. If you're going to build a retail or a real estate business online, well, if you're not in the real estate business, you're not going to really think about it the right way. You're building it for other people. That's what I say is wrong. You should be building it for yourself. And if you're not building it for yourself, you better have a tight partnership with somebody that absolutely wants it for themselves, because they're going to want it to be so perfect and so right and not confusing and get all the beauty into the product.
I mean, Steve was clearly the most outstanding business thinker, and almost everybody who's high up in the technology business recognized that somehow he had the ability to think out new ways of doing things, not just ways to improve what we have, do a better version of something, but do it in a totally different way that the world would swing towards. And then I think back to just all the times we had together, very, very good times that you have when you're young, and playing around with the systems and little misbehavior and doing interesting things. And then he was always thinking about certain technology, the early products that got developed, the building parts, what those might lead to in our future. And he was always pushing me as an engineer. Could you possibly add this someday? Could you possibly add that someday? Yes, I could, thinking, no, it's way, way off. But eventually we all did. We went into the garage when we were 2 young people with no money. You have to work out of your home. We had jobs on the side. We had nobody that could loan us money. We had no business experience. We're like 1 million young people who are so excited about the future they might have someday in business, making something just out of their ideas. That's what we were. And over and over and over, all the products of Apple, from iPhones and iPads, iPods, these were just unbelievable life changers. And almost everyone who heads a technology company looks at Steve Jobs as, where did he get the ideas to do it the right way? We were just the lucky partnership. He was lucky to have me in the beginning, but I am incredibly lucky to him for everything in my life. He gets a reputation for being a strong leader and being brash, but to me, he was just always so kind, such a good friend, and I'm just going to miss him.
Your actions, you should always feel in life and in your jobs, your actions are somehow have a good purpose behind them. They better the world in some way. Don't ever do something just because it's an assignment. You better believe that there is some end goal that is good for the world. Almost every new invention and computer and all came about from those ideals. I mean, I really wanted to help the world communicate so much. Other people inspired me into a revolution. I wanted to be a part of changing things. I wanted to be a part of better education. I wanted to be a part of the young person having so much mastery over technology and be able to do things they never could before. Those were the goods that were pushing me. It was almost without those goods, I wouldn't have even designed a computer.
Everyone likes to talk about failures, but the main thing is you might have a lot of little small steps. Every one of those steps seemed to not take you anywhere in money. It didn't get you much more money. It didn't get you any money, but you're kind of proud. You show them off to friends even. Your mind was increasing. Your methods of coming up with better solutions was increasing. You not only have to now read a book on how things are done, you can write the book, and that's called creativity. You create new things yourself. So always try it. Here's the biggest key I can give to anybody in the world, that if you're kind of smart and you're working on some project, maybe it's software, maybe it's hardware, try to think at the end, you complete it. You know enough to complete it. Don't stop there. Say, how can I make it perfect? Almost better than any other human being would. Can I shorten the code? Can I redo it a little cleaner structure? Give yourself some of those redos. And when you're young, you'll put in a lot more than 8 hours a day. Believe in yourself. You don't have to win arguments. You don't have to prove to somebody else that you're right. If you believe you're right and everybody else say, no, it's not done this way, you'll never make money at it, but you believe in it. That's what matters. And you got to follow what's in your heart. But the second piece of advice is how far you go in life is usually, I was taught this when I was young, and I believe it. It's how well liked you are by the people you work with. That will determine how far you go up organization, ladders and the like. So be nice to people. Don't be cutting them down. Don't be rude and all that stuff. It's just my philosophy. The talents that you have, you're learning so many formulas, how to connect things, how to build devices. The main thing is, why would you go through an education learning how to design and create new things and then go out and just try to copy what exists? Always try to think for yourself and think out better things than were there before. Even don't be afraid to go in different ways. Shy engineers, I think you have a huge advantage. When you always want to have an instant answer to everything. You don't sit back and reflect and think out the best working solution, taking everything into account. Spend a lot of time on your own. Call it dream time. Maybe when you're just alone in a quiet room, nobody else with you, falling asleep, and really imagine the limits of where you can go. Don't start building something until you've gone very far and you know that you've thought something out very well that's ahead of what other people are doing. Try to imagine yourself as the best engineer in the world, every one of you. Try to think of little tricks you can do in your design. Can I do one thing different, add one thing that would make me better that other engineers wouldn't do?
These days, entrepreneurship is taught as courses in all the colleges, and usually it's a business level course. So you've got all these business guys that, oh my gosh, if I write some ideas down on paper, that's how you go about it, starting a company. And my principle is no. So many people in Silicon Valley got used to write ideas down on paper and then try to get some money, like we can just buy the engineering for it. No, I like the type of entrepreneurship that has actually created working models. Here is an example of something that works the way we want it, and we've built it, and we've got the talented technical people that know how to do it. And I think it should get to that phase. So the entrepreneurship, it's a combination of the business and the technical doers, the technology people.
I would rather have a happier life. And sure, if getting success in business is what makes me happy, that's fine. But I really believe that, some kind of enjoyment aspect should go through, especially all learning and all work. Now, I was an engineer. The work is hard. It's intense. You work late hours at night sometimes trying to solve a problem, and it's so hard to get there, and you finally crack through, and it's sort of a relief. But you know what? When you're working that hard all day long. You need those little jokes with your friends. You need the lunchtime where you sit down and chat. Is such a big part of your life.
We had not already designed all of the interface cards and the peripherals and the software that goes into the mini computers of the day, or the larger systems. And to us, it was so exciting because it was like we thought we were doing the things for the first time they'd ever been done. And it was the first time they'd ever been done that cheap, using a lot of the LSI technology. And so there was a lot of just the excitement everywhere we went. It was like putting out a little table and showing off a little card that would play music on a computer or make color was the most exciting thing in the world. We thought we were way ahead of the rest of the world. What I was doing around that time was not even thinking about what are the right steps to take to have a very large successful company or a large successful product. It was just, I had been working my whole life to build a certain type of computer for myself, and I just built the best one that was doable in that day with the particular components available, etc.
It's really quite an honor for me to be invited frequently to clubs around the country, and so I usually always say, yeah, I'll come out and talk to you, and I'm not really a public speaker or a real professional type person, but it's great to be here in Cleveland for the first time. And, Wojnowicz called me up and said, hey, we got a great lake you can swim in. I don't know if I believe that guy, but I understand it's actually pretty shallow. Somebody didn't pay a water bill or something. And I was going through the Neo Apple Bits newsletter last night, and I saw there was calendars of all the dates in the upcoming months and significant computer events, and it reminded me of this calendar I bought back in Silicon Valley. And it had all these, dates of when certain computers were designed or big things happened. I opened it up. I quickly flipped it over to my birthday, and there it was. August 11, Bill Budge's birthday. So, it's really tough to follow and act like the Macintosh demo, and that was the best presentation that could be done on the Macintosh. It just short of $80,000. That's the only way you can do a better one. A lot of the designers that you've pictured, heard about, read their profiles in Byte magazine and whatnot, a lot of them are some of the oldest people from Apple. They're the most incredible designers, programmers, hardware people, engineers, self-taught people at Apple, and their personalities are unexpectedly extremely like the profiles you can read about. They're the most incredibly interesting people in the world, and I hope they can come out here and address you in the near future. Their creative abilities are allowed to flourish by Steve Jobs' approach, seeking excellence in the products he's after. As long as it's his creation, he believes it's excellent. So he's the greatest showman in the world. He's the greatest speaker, presenter. He's the most capable, able, intelligent person you could ever meet in your life. And all I am is just, normal. I go to Denny's even, So pretty much I'm going to start with a talk about how Apple came into the world from nowhere. What led up to this whole thing of personal computers ever happening in the first place? And I'll think way back to school. Myself, I've been sort of the engineer who designed the first Apples. Back in school, I got into science fairs. You get a technical orientation. If you live in Silicon Valley, there was a good chance that a lot of the local parents worked for electronics companies. A lot of the kids got into house-to-house intercom clubs. We were into walkie-talkies, so it's a good community to grow up and happen to have an electronics bend as a hobby, because our parents were mostly engineers. Early in school, I happened to get aimed towards logic design, very, very early ages, and ham radio and whatnot. In high school, you combine being a good math student. It's unusual to go into electronics courses and learn how TV signals work and sync signals and color phases. It's unusual because electronics in high school is generally, at least it was back in the late 60s, considered to be like an auto shop course.
Wasn't that amazing? What did you think of his thoughts and ideas? Were you amazed by his wisdom and his knowledge? Were you inspired by him? Surely you are. But were you able to list down all the valuable knowledge he shared with you in this video? Just like Steve Wozniak, will you also strive for perfection? We want to know what this 30 minutes alone time with Steve Wozniak does for you. Did this video change your perspectives? Or did this video change your life for the better? For sure, you're still in awe with how genius this man is, most especially when it comes to electronics. But please don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know which tip you're going to implement right now starting today. That's it for this video, Fortune Fastlaner. Remember to subscribe to our channel. And if you feel like we delivered value, please share this video with one person. That's right, just one person, as a token of your appreciation for the hard work we put into making content that educates and helps you on your mission of building your own fortune. Remember, you can watch video after video, but it isn't until you actually take action that you'll start to see results. See you soon.